Love sourdough but need it allergy-friendly? We've got you covered. From bubbly starter to the perfect loaf and even sweet cinnamon rolls. Join us for this gluten-free, dairy-free, allergy-friendly journey. So you'll start with 10 grams of gluten-free sourdough starter and 10 grams of water. Just add it together and make sure it's rehydrated. Shake this together to allow it to rehydrate. Wait until the starter is fully rehydrated to process on the next step. This could be done in a few minutes, but I happen to wait for a full day. You can see that I have included a screenshot of the time that I do each of the feeds to show how flexible this process is. I use an identical empty jar to weigh on the scale and find the weight of the starter inside the jar. So it helps to have two of the container that you are making your starter in. Your first feeding will be 20 grams of brown rice flour and 20 grams of room temperature water. Thoroughly push down after you've stirred it to make sure that none of it is sticking to the sides. This will make sure that it doesn't dry out. The wild yeast grows well in the moist environment, so we want to make sure to get all the yeasties growing as much as possible. Wait 4 to 8 hours until your next feeding. The second feeding will be 60 grams of brown rice flour and 60 grams of water. It's really important to use a whole grain flour so that the yeast has adequate food so it can grow. Again, mix it thoroughly and cover it with a cloth and rubber band and let it set for 4 to 8 hours. Now you can see that the bubbles are starting to form. The third feeding will begin with discarding. Discard all but 100 grams of starter. You can place the 100 grams into a new jar if that's easier for you. Then add 100 grams of water and 100 grams of brown rice flour. At this step, I add a rubber band around the jar to mark the top of the mixture so that I can tell how much it has risen. Throughout this process, you'll want to check the consistency of the starter. Depending upon your environment, you may need slightly more or slightly less water. If you're in a very humid environment like I am in the summer, you'll want to use a little less water. I'm in Arkansas State and I usually use about 80 grams of water with 100 of brown rice flour and starter. But in the winter when it's dry, I use 100. Basically, you're looking for a texture that is as dry as possible, but you can still stir it. Also, when you tap it on the counter, it should flatten at the top. It shouldn't be still lumpy. Can you please go ahead and comment in the comments section below what amount of water you used, what your humidity percentage is if you have that, or what location you're in so that we can benefit the other people in our community. Also, while you're at it, please like and subscribe. That will very much help me. Thank you. You can see that it has about doubled after 8 hours or so. Our goal is to get a little more rise in much less time, 4 hours to be specific. It will continue to rise faster and fuller with each feeding. You can keep feeding every 4 to 8 hours. In this case, I let mine go 16 hours before feeding it again, and you can see that it has fallen from peak rise by the time I feed it. Then you can see on Friday after 6 hours the rise looks pretty good. It's near double and it's speeding up, and then I forget about it for 43 hours and leave it at room temperature. And this is just being real with you. I know that sometimes we get totally off schedule, and the good thing is that sourdough is flexible. It works with your schedule. So Sunday morning, I feed it again, and I finally get diligent on Monday morning when I feed it again at 8:30 and then at noon. Then doubles in 4 hours, and it's ready to bake with. Yum! Sourdough bread! You can find the sourdough bread link at the end of this video or below. Sourdough can last 2 weeks in the fridge uncared for. However, feeding every week is ideal. These don't need to be full feeds. You can just give it a little bit of brown rice flour and a little bit of water. But if I'm baking every 3 to 4 days, I don't even need to worry about it. If I'm having a particularly hard time reviving my starter, I might use potato water, the water that's left after cooking potatoes, for like mashed potatoes for instance, for the water to feed my starter, and it loves that. Finally, if you won't be baking for a month or so, you can dry your own starter. Simply brush it out on a silicone sheet or a parchment paper in a very thin layer. You want to use ideally peak rise starter because it'll have the highest concentration of yeast in it. Although you can also use discard. I've done it with both. Discard may just take a little bit longer to start up again. And then just let it dry in a well-ventilated and dehumidified place. And then after 24 hours, it will be dry enough that you can crumble it up and place it in a jar. It can be stored for over a year once it has dried. I also keep my dried starter in the fridge just to prolong its life and quality and to keep as many of the yeast alive as long as possible. We're gonna make the Preferment. Zero your scale and change the unit to grams. We'll need 150 grams of starter at peak rise. So ideally feed it about 4 hours before you want to start. And I'll feed my starter later. Now we need some water and brown rice flour. And 100 grams of water. Now stir this together. You can let the pre-ferment set for anywhere from 0 to 24 hours. I've done it all the way along the spectrum, and the longer you let it set, the more sour it is. But it's good at all points, in my opinion. When you're letting it set, just cover it with a towel. And I like to place a rubber band over it, just like that. Alright, let's make our liquids. We need water, 300 grams. And now psyllium husk, we need 20 grams. I've made this right inside the pre-ferment before, just adding it straight there, and it works that way too. But for starters, feel free to do it separately just to get everything straight. 20 grams. Since I forgot to clear it in between, I'll just add that to the 300 of water for 320. Alright, there we go. Now we'll go ahead and give this a whisk. And the psyllium husk is non-substitutable. This is an essential ingredient. It'll act as the binder, kind of like the gluten does in regular bread. Also, we can add the oil here, oil and honey. Oil is optional. You can put 8 to 15 grams in. Oops, a little more, but that'll be okay. This helps make the crust not quite as stiff and hard. I like this recipe because it is a little flexible. If you have like 5 grams more of oil, it's not gonna mess it up. And I'm gonna use honey here, 20 grams, but you can also use other sweeteners like agave, molasses, sorghum syrup, yeah, I've used a lot of different things and it's worked. I'm gonna go ahead and mix in the oil and honey. There we go, you can already see it starting to thicken up. Alright, now we're gonna combine our flours. So we're gonna start with brown rice flour. It needs 80 grams, and you can play around with the flours. I am using brown rice and sorghum. I've done all brown rice and all sorghum before, and it's worked just fine. It also works with other things. You can try like cornmeal, and various other flours. But of course, it's good to try it, you know, with these two flours at first, because they are very reliable. Then you'll know what you're after and you can compare. You need 80 of sorghum too, or if you're experimenting, there'll be 160 of whatever flour or flour combination you use. Now we're gonna get the starches. We need potato starch and tapioca starch. Alright, we're gonna put in 60 of tapioca. And I have done this with all tapioca and with all potato starch, one or the other, and it's worked just fine. And then 80 of potato starch. Alright, the final ingredient is salt. We want 12 grams of salt. Alright, and we'll stir this up. Now we're going to mix together our psyllium, which you can see has gelled quite a bit, into our preferment. Next we'll add our flour. I have in the past accidentally omitted the salt, and it still has great texture, but it doesn't taste as good, so make sure you add the salt. If you accidentally forget it, just like use it with mayo, and the mayo will cover for the lack of salt. I've also accidentally forgotten the honey in the past, and it raises slightly less, but it's still okay. Alright, that's somewhat combined. I'm gonna knead it on the counter now. It doesn't need to be kneaded for very long, just until it's thoroughly combined. No longer than 5 minutes. It can start to get extra sticky if you over knead it. Alright, now I'm looking for a nice smooth side to put down, and I put it in the bowl to raise. I think this looks nice and smooth. I'm going to take my towel, put it in a small bowl, and add a little starch flour just to make it so it doesn't stick. Let it rise for 4 hours, then we'll bake. Once the bread has risen for about 3.5 hours, preheat the oven to 425. Add your Dutch oven inside while the oven is preheating. Allow it to heat up for at least 30 minutes, up to an hour. I've also done it without much preheating, and it's worked also. After 4 hours of rising time, or until your bread dough has doubled, go ahead and gently transfer the dough from the bowl onto a silicone baking mat or a piece of parchment paper. Use a knife to score in whatever design you desire, and then brush off the flour. You can also do this before the scoring, which will actually be better. Use the parchment paper or silicone sheet to move the dough into the Dutch oven. Replace the lid and put it in the oven. Bake for about an hour and a half. I like to do 60 minutes covered and 20 minutes uncovered. But if you do all uncovered or all covered, that will also work. The covered entirely will allow for a slightly softer crust. Uncovered may bake a little bit too quickly, not allowing for as full of expansion, but I've tried it both ways and it works just fine. So let me know in the comments below what you decided to do. Did you do uncovered or covered, and how long did you bake it for if you did a combination of both? Very nicely crusty. Check out that bread. Wow. And while you're at it, please like and subscribe. Push that notifications button. And one last thing. It's very important to let the bread sit for 4 hours before you cut it after it bakes. The bread finishes baking out of the oven. So hold your horses, don't get too excited, and just wait until it's completely cooled before you cut it. And then enjoy the most delicious bread you've had since going gluten-free. To get started, we are going to take 20 grams of powdered psyllium husk. Now I'm adding 265 grams of milk, warmed. Whisk this together. You'll want to make sure the milk is warm so that it absorbs with the psyllium husk in the best way possible. Make sure it's not hot because that could damage your starter, but just warm. I am using Better Than Milk powder, which is reconstituted with water. It's a soy-based milk, but you can use other milks too. Alright, now we need 6 grams of vanilla. Now we need our gluten-free starter, which I have some at Peak Rise here, 275 grams. We need 300 grams of Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1, the blue bag. 50 grams of sugar. I'm using raw turbinado sugar. 6 grams of salt. 50 grams of potato starch. I'm stirring the flours together, then combining it with the starter, and finally with the psyllium husk. Before I finish stirring this, I'm going to get out my butter, and I'm going to soften this whole thing. We're going to use half now, half later. So I am going to divide it into 2 bowls before softening it in the microwave for 15 seconds. Okay, I'm gonna put it just a little bit longer. Another 15 seconds, depending upon how cold your butter is. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and use my hands because I always feel I can get a better knead going with my hands. And there'll come a point where it's just really hard to incorporate any more flour into the dough because it is so dry. And at this point, go ahead and add 1 bowl of butter. You can use a bread machine to make this easier and just beat it for 2 minutes. Ready to roll! I'm aiming for about 8.5 by 19 inches. Every so often, I'm gonna stop to push the edges in and out so that I get corners on the sides in the right shape of dough. If the dough starts sticking, I'm going to add a little bit of flour. Stopping again to even it out. Alright, that looks about right. I'm gonna measure it. We have 9 inches by 19. There we go, just right. Now we're gonna put our butter. Now we're gonna spread it out. Attention to getting the edges farthest to the right and left, but kind of trying to skip the edge at the bottom because that'll help make it stickier and help our buns to stick together. So I'm leaving about a 1/2 inch or so unbuttered at the bottom edge. Alright, there we go. Now I'm going to mix 2/3 cup of brown sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon together. And sprinkle it over. I'm going to remove any hard chunks. And smooth it evenly over the whole piece of dough. Now you can put in whatever goodies your heart desires. I love raisins and also chopped pecans. Now it's time to cut. I am cutting at every inch. You can cut thicker cinnamon rolls, however, they will need a longer baking time. I like these because you can eat 2 for the price of 1. I'm spreading a tiny bit of oil around in my baking dish. There we go. Now we can begin the rolling. Use a fork to close the roll. Please like and subscribe. Check the description for my favorite allergy-friendly substitutions. I know it's hard to wait, but now these guys need to rise for 4 hours. You can put them in after 3.5. I set my oven to the lowest temperature possible, 170, to allow the surface to heat ever so slightly. It's just warm to the touch, not hot at all, which will allow these to rise a little bit faster. Maybe I should also add, don't set them right over the oven vent. Otherwise, you'll end up pre-baking your cinnamon rolls and they will not rise. All right, the oven is preheated and our rolls are ready to go in. Oh, they're so beautiful. All right, 30 minutes later, the cinnamon rolls are ready to come out. And I'm going to flip them over on this cooling rack. The silicone mat underneath the cinnamon rolls makes for easy cleanup. I scraped the bottom of the pan and I get to drizzle this onto the top of these lovelies. Woohoo! Check out this texture. Ooh, it's hot still. Okay, I'm gonna use forks. Okay, this is gonna be better. But anyways, look at this. Yes, you're watching as I mutilate a perfectly good cinnamon roll to show you this texture. So good. These cinnamon rolls freeze great, and just take them out one at a time, put them in the microwave for 30 seconds, and enjoy yourself a delicious cinnamon roll. Alright, now that it's not so hot, I just want to show you this texture. Look at that. This is another one I just have to demo for you. And that is your sourdough toolkit. If you're enjoying these allergy-friendly bakes, don't forget to like and subscribe for more allergy-friendly twists.